Hello and welcome to another episode of Sonic Touch, the show dedicated to making music on touch devices. Nice moves there, Gaz. I'm Nick Batt, editor of Sonic State.
And I'm Gaz Williams.
We've been away for a little while, and primarily because, Gaz, you've been rather busy, right?
Yeah, I've been on tour with Carl Hyde from Underworld, which is a great gig.
Great gig,
going
all over the world.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But unfortunately, it has taken me away a lot, so I haven't really been able to make the shows.
So what we're going to do this week is just kind of have a roundup of where we are. I mean, what's really been happening in the kind of world of the iPad.
Yeah. I mean, you know, things have been moving on, maybe slower than they were when we first started doing this, but you know, things are reaching more levels of maturity. Animoog's reached version 2, Alchemy Mobile's reached version 2, so we're seeing things making that kind of mature, definitely. But we were kind of intrigued by the prospect of making a tune to a brief, and that was our initial idea.
Yeah, one of the things that came out was, you know, obviously AudioBus has also taken some leaps and bounds. You know, more programs are supporting it. In fact, we've got IMPC and the iMini supported.
Yeah, last episode we were speculating, was there going to be a schism between tabletop
and AudioBus?
Yeah,
and now they're just supporting both, which is kind of great. So we thought it would be possible, you know, to take a creative process and connect these all things together and just kind of make a tune really with great ease.
Yeah, we were wondering if we had access to an iPad and if we had access to just a regular DAW on a computer, would you choose to do the whole process on the iPad?
Or indeed, could you? And what we actually found was yes and no. We'd sort of start off by going, say, for instance, we used the DM1, which is it Fingerlabs?
Terrific drum machine. Let's just bring that in.
We thought we'd create a beat in Fingerlabs, which is this is my rather COD drum and bass type beat, and then we could easily just take that into the program of our choice via either AudioBus or audio copy paste, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
right?
Well, big news in the AudioBus world is that GarageBand supports AudioBus now, which was a surprise to many, really, because Apple tend to be much more closed. So we thought, well, let's see if we played DM1 through AudioBus into GarageBand, thus keeping DM1 live.
Yeah, so we could change the voicings, the drum fills, you know, and then just record stuff into GarageBand. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case because there's no synchronization on the MIDI. So when you press play using AudioBus, it just sort of randomly, you know, or rather records. GarageBand has a click and it sort of waits, and then it just doesn't work, does it?
Well, and this is, when you start having to then go in, edit, and start moving things around, and it's like,
you don't really want to do that.
You don't want to do that.
But what people don't perhaps realise is you can also use audio copy paste in GarageBand. It's sort of quite hidden, so maybe we should show people how that works.
Okay, so with something like DM1, we could just export. I'm going to go pattern, audio copy, go. So now that's just kind of made a little mix down to the
clipboard.
The clipboard, thank you. And now if we create a blank audio track in GarageBand, it's a long press. Oh, there it is.
Right, so we've pasted it in.
Yeah.
And the thing is with that, you have to make sure it's the last thing you copied into the clipboard. With audio copy paste, you get the opportunity to store multiple clipboards, but with the GarageBand kind of implementation of it, you don't. Yeah. But what that means is we've got that pattern, and we can just drag it out and copy it.
Turn it into loop, and then you can just, that's really nice. What you'd have to make sure you did, though, is make sure that you set the tempo.
Yes,
the same.
Tempo would have to be the same. And this throws up an issue that we ran into almost immediately. As we were getting these creative juices flowing, we were running into these, yes, but you need to do this and then that, and then you have to make sure that, and these are the things that really do interfere with the workflow of the creative process. I mean, if you were just making a tune by numbers and you knew exactly what you're doing and just went, I do this and this and this and this, then fine. But if you're, as with most music, there's an element of exploration and left and right brain, it really is pretty incompatible, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a shame because there's so many nice ideas, but with it all fragmented, this kind of process becomes a little bit convoluted. Now, we were talking about how AudioBus simply is a way to route audio. but we were talking about synchronization.
Yeah, and this was one of the things. There's also whist, which is Korg's way of communicating, starting devices and synchronizing the clocks, and that would have been great. In this instance, it would have been brilliant because then we could just press record.
Yeah.
And it would have just gone straight in, you know, and then we could maybe replace that track if we decided to change the patterns and stuff in DM, but, you know, we can't do that. And that's, there's this fragmentation of standards that is creating problems in the workflow.
And speaking of standards then, there is a new standard which has just come out, which is called Jack. Now, people like Linux users may be familiar with Jack. I know you can get it with OS X as well. And Jack is a way of, like AudioBus, of routing things through, but also you can route MIDI as well. So right now, very few things actually support it. So on my system, I think I've only got the one thing, which is the fantastic Thumbjam. Now, Thumbjam, incidentally, now supports landscape mode.
Because every time we've done anything with Thumbjam in the past, we've had to turn the iPad up.
Now we can see in Jack, we can route audio. This is routing just to the system, audio system, and then we can route MIDI through as well. But at the moment, because so few things
nowhere to go.
support it, But theoretically, this looks like it could bring those two things together. Audio routing and MIDI routing. So,
what is Jack? Is Jack a free download?
Yeah, Jack's free. It's a free download, and as I say, early days, but you know, promising.
And again, what this means is obviously we've got the situation where it's another bit of fragmentation. I mean, we can't. Well, I'm pretty sure AudioBus have got plans to introduce MIDI and all sorts of other things to kind of to bring things together. So you know, it's almost like a format war in a kind of. In a more sort of benign sense, perhaps.
But I think, though, one of the things that we did hit regularly in our little
CPU load.
Well, CPU load. Now, this is an iPad 2, which, granted, is not the cutting edge right now.
So we had a track running in GarageBand, or two tracks, perhaps, which was the DM1 that we put in there, and the bass we'd recorded, and then we put AudioBus routing into GarageBand from a synth. You know, we tried iMini, which granted is quite a hungry device. This is the Arturia Mini Moog emulation that we showed in last episode, and then we tried the N-Log. What's the
N-Log
synthesizer?
Yeah.
And the problem is even just with, you know, which we know has less of a CPU, even with that, it was still running into CPU issues. And the audio was crunching a bit. So.
The new version, or the most recent version of AudioBus, does allow you to change the buffer settings, and we were running it with the biggest buffer at 512, and that still was causing problems.
So basically, you're going to be, unless you've got the latest iPad, the iPad 4, you're going to be running into this sort of thing all the time, which again, you know, in the context of what we were trying to do, which was to create a piece of music, it just stymied us again and again, and we just found we sort of abandoned it really because we just couldn't get it to work in a flowing sort of way.
In a flowing way, you know, and so there still is a little way to go, and maybe if it was an iPad 4 and a few things like this, and we...
I mean, I think the one thing to also recall is if we didn't have our tower systems or our laptops, and this was all we could do, then we'd be happy to have these capabilities. And it's easy to forget that actually, you know, what we can do here is amazing. And, you know, given that if somebody's got very limited financial resources, they've just got an iPad, this is all possible. You just have to plan ahead and you have to work in a slightly different way. So, you know, it's not... it might seem that we're sort of really down it. It is possible to do all of these things, but it's a compromise against what the workflow that we're used to using, which is something that then allows us to be creative in a flow without thinking about the technology.
Yeah, because people ask us, you know, questions, you know, what are you actually using? What do you use your iPad for? And I mean, like, I use my iPad in a myriad of ways, but I do perform gigs and stuff.
Of course, you did a couple of gigs with The Egg, right?
Yeah, classic live techno band, sort of been very innovative since the 1990s. Maff and Ned from The Egg, and I played a couple of gigs with them recently, and I just used the iPad, and it's quite interesting when you're in that situation. That's kind of live improvising.
Single purpose. The iPad is this instrument at the one time. So what were you using?
I used a couple of apps. I used the new or newish Wavemapper from
Wolfgang Palm.
Yes.
The man, in fact, who created the original PPG. So,
yes.
Ooh,
yeah.
What do you think?
I think it's fantastic. I don't understand it. And it's a bit too complicated to explain in full, but just to show what I was using it for was, you've got this grid where there's various kind of waveforms that can affect or modulate the sound. So this is like a kind of flute sound. And what I love is that there's a random button. When you press the random button, you get completely new sounds.
And are these based around the patches that you start around? So they're modifications of the patch rather than just a... Right, okay.
Yeah. And because of the way that this kind of grid is laid out with all these different kind of waveforms, you can get in there and adjust them and make your own ones.
So it looks like you can drag various different elements into these synthesis slots on a basic level. It's worth remembering that the actual, what was the other one? The wave generator. The wave generator, it was so deep, we found it very difficult to kind of fully grasp. This one, on the surface of it, again, it's very simple, but it goes way deep.
Yeah, so when you start getting into all your pages of parameters and
perhaps that's for another episode.
Strange analysis mode. But I love this random function because you get these really interesting sounds that you completely
don't know what's going to happen. Right, live, that's very brave.
Well, this is what I was doing, and I was really enjoying it because I'd basically press the random button, like now, and then I would use another piece of software in order to control it. In this case, I was using Musix Pro. So
it's the Blockbusters scoreboard.
Blockbusters, yeah. So this is great. I've got this set up now, so it's sending MIDI to the Wavemapper. And why I like this is the way that the notes are laid out in this kind of hexagon way. And it's quite fun because you can move around and get melodies that you wouldn't find if you were playing it on a traditional keyboard layout. But this is what I was doing. I would press the random button, and then flick to this, and wait for a bit of music, and then come in with something.
Which could be, what's this one? Right, so that's quite an exciting concept live, I imagine.
So let's try that again. Random, flick back to the other one, wait for my time, and bits coming in.
3, 4. That's a bit more acceptable.
Yeah.
So did you get fired?
Well, they haven't asked me back. But I think what's quite cool though, this app is really nice. Look at this. You can just move around it.
Oh, so you're shifting octaves.
So you can shift octaves by just these little thumbprints here, which you can just drag then sort of. Now, I've got it set up so out of scale notes are playable, but they're black.
Okay, so
you can disable that. So you.
I must admit, I don't get on with things that aren't standard keyboard layouts. They're just really counterintuitive to me.
Okay, you say that's unintuitive, but I think it's just quite interesting because on a regular keyboard, each note has only got 2 neighbours, whereas here you've got 6 neighbours, including notes which are outside of the key. You can set the key in this bit here, but so.
Right.
So you can find maybe combinations of melodies that you wouldn't find in the traditional layout. And also playing harmonies is cool because
so you get voicings and inversions that you wouldn't normally kind of find elsewhere. I get that, but it's just the repeatability, I think, is the issue I have with these things, because I don't know the layout. It's like I have no muscle memory of what to do with my fingers, so it's very much a kind of like, let's see what happens kind of instrument.
And I think in that particular case, because I was like in an improvisation setting, and I was working out what the key the music was, putting the scale notes there, so I knew I had safe notes. But it's nice having those.
Incidentals, right.
The incidentals, yeah.
It'd be great if you had patch change capabilities to send via MIDI as well, because then that would throw the randomise function or whatever into operation. That would
be cool. That would be cool. Yeah, I mean, it is quite a simple app. You can change the size of the things. You can have them epic size.
That's more. That's more. I can probably handle that. 3 notes as long as they're the right ones.
And then, interestingly, a few other things of interest. You can sort of. I've got. You can have the hexagon orientation changed. Also, it has got some built-in sounds as well, and you can decide what the intervals are in which direction. So I've got like major thirds and minor thirds. And one of the things that is quite cool with this, though, is when you learn, let me just make that bigger so we can see some more. I'll just go regular. When you learn a chord shape, for instance, you know, a triangle,
G major, yeah.
If you sort of invert that shape, you've got the minor. So everywhere, any note, you go, if you want to play a D major, if you want to play a G major, if you want to play a C major, it's the same shape. Unlike a keyboard, you have to transpose shapes. If it's a minor key, then it's like an upside down triangle. C minor, F minor.
Okay.
You know, so...
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's probably not for me, though.
I love it. I think it's really cool. But Nick, you, I mean, you use your iPad quite a lot, but maybe... Yeah,
it's not so much of a musical thing. What I use is MIDI Designer Pro, which I know was the recipient of our first ever Gold Award, which is a fantastic piece of software. And I use this, I've created an interface for switching cameras. So I switch over there, I switch over here, but Andy's also got this running on him, and Andy's actually switching this show, not me this time. But what's brilliant about the MIDI Designer Pro, I think it's up to now version 1.4 point something. It's now developed more kinds of controllers. You've got customized ticks, and what you can actually do is actually create divisions of values and assign those values to have text values. So for instance, you could have 4 positions within an entire range that might say chorus on, chorus off, chorus 1, chorus 2, you know, those kind of things. So you can create much more intuitive things. So that's what I use on a daily basis here. We use it almost all the time for our switching.
Yeah, because it's so fast.
And one thing I will say, I use the iPad as for a single purpose at a single time. I don't have email or Facebook or anything else going on. Whereas if you do use your iPad for that sort of thing all the time, it can be very distracting, isn't it? Because it can do all of these things.
Yes.
If you're in the middle of going widdly, widdly, widdly on a synth and coming up with an idea, and then bing!
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about that just the other day, didn't we?
Yeah, and I mean, you know, obviously you can turn off those things, go into airplane mode, so just lock it down, but we don't often do that, so those distractions do come in and they do break your little, you know, the mode that you're in, that creative zone.
And those kind of notifications, they do, while you can get them on your desktop, they're somehow less intrusive because you have a full screen app on the iOS device, and you know, therefore it kind of impinges on the GUI and, and you know, makes a notification noise. So I think that's perhaps one thing to learn from, if you're trying to use it seriously creatively, then I guess you turned it all off for your gig, right?
Yeah, and you can turn off, you know, the notifications. If you go into the settings, you can just really shut those notifications off.
What would be really good is someone to make an app that just is a button that's always there in the corner. You can just go off, on, so you can be very much online, offline, online, offline. Yeah,
I mean, you know, you can with the airplane mode, I suppose, is that really. But
one other thing that we did notice when we were doing the kind of trying to create a piece of music, we think, oh, if we start a project in GarageBand, it'd be really cool if we could just email the whole thing to somebody else, they could work on it and come back. And again, these things are not so simple. You know, this you can do it.
You can do it, but you have to go via a computer.
And, so it just feels like the ecosystem, while it's very enclosed, is still not as widely developed as you know, some of the other more mature creation platforms and pieces of software that we use in our sort of everyday computing.
Yeah, and other limitations. I got a little portable recorder, and I take my iPad out with me and say I'm on tour, and I make a little field recording, and then I want to take the files out of the SD card. I want to take it from the little Zoom recorder into the iPad. No way. There's no way to do it. You have to go via a computer. So you know, that really winds me up in a way, because that locked system means that it's a very simple thing I want to do. Just take that file and bring it in, because some of the editing software is great, but I have to go through a computer. And every time you have to go via a computer, it really kind of contradicts what's kind of nice about this self-contained unit.
So I hope you've enjoyed the show this week. That pretty much wraps it up. As ever, please do leave your comments and suggestions below. It really helps us kind of focus the show when we do get round to doing them.
Yes.
Gaz, you're going to be off again, so it's going to be another gap, I think.
Well, we'll try and fit some more in there, hopefully.
Yep, great. So anyway, thanks for watching. That was Sonic Touch, episode 23. Cheers.